Welcome to Successful Parenting, where we, Jackie Rue and Robin Choquette, share practical skills for families to build resilience and healthy connections. As practicing professionals and parents ourselves, we hope this podcast is a resource for parents to grow, reflect, and learn more about themselves and their children. Our approach is simple, tangible, and most importantly, we lead with compassion for the integrity of the families we serve. This podcast should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for informational purposes only. We love our work, and we can't wait to watch families gain confidence and open themselves up to new ways of successful parenting. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, Robin. How's it going?
It is good. I've had a really great week. Things are going well, busy as usual. I'm sure you are too, right?
Yes, and I think this topic is going to be really pertinent today for our families.
Yeah, I do too. You know, I had a mom and she has 4 kids, and I asked her if I could share this story, and she's in her own battle with cancer, and we were just talking about how she maintains and how she keeps going, and she said to me that there's a quote that helps her, and she thinks about it often, almost every day. And it's from Margaret Thatcher. And she just says, you know, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. And it just took a moment for me. And I thought about it. That's right. And it feels almost empowering. And I see parents sometimes when things slide to the left, then there's this frustration or anger of, well, wait a minute, we were doing better. Why did this happen? And it's almost that mindset, right?
Absolutely. And I like that, you know, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. I think so many families and parents too, they forget that children are going to struggle, right? And I was telling a mom yesterday that your child may struggle when they're younger. They may struggle when they're in elementary school. You may struggle at different points, but you're going to struggle. And I love how you said, you know, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it.
To me, it was pretty powerful. And I wrote it down, and I'm really kind of carrying that with me and sharing that with other families as we talk about resilience and how to manage everything that's going on. Well, let's jump right in. Introduce our guest for today. You know her, Jackie, already, Peggy McGuire. We met Peggy years ago. Peggy's just this amazing lady with energy. She's much like you, Jackie. She's like the Energizer bunny that just goes and goes. And I feel just exhausted watching the two of you. Peggy has dedicated over 30 years to just helping families becoming stronger and ensuring that children can really thrive in their environment. She's responsible for coordinating services for at-risk and vulnerable families and through home visits, which I think is a really unique opportunity for families to have someone could come into their home and to help them. Currently, she serves as the Director of Child and Family Development at Strong Families at the YWCA in metropolitan Chicago. Strong Families serves families and children from birth to 17, and that's kind of something that you don't see a lot for home visits, which is a unique range. And she can really provide a lot for a lot of families. They do a lot of parenting education workshops. So welcome, Peggy.
Welcome. I am so happy to be here with you ladies today.
Well, and we're happy to work, you know, we've worked together before, and we're happy, you know, just to be here with you today. I always learn so much from you, Peggy, honestly. And I think this is such a great topic to talk about. And I'm really excited to kind of hear what you have to share. Just to start off, can you tell us a little bit more about what the YWCA is and kind of what your role really is in terms of working with and partnering with families?
Sure. And thank you. Thank you for the comparison to Jackie. That's a high compliment, but I'll try to keep my energy in check. I don't want to exhaust everybody every second all the time. I came to the YWCA with the good fortune. So I was the executive director for Project Help, which is a nonprofit that when I came on board, they were serving up a handful of families. And within 2 years, we were serving thousands of families with our workshops, and we had hundreds of families on our wait list. So thankfully, the YWCA reached out to me, and we were able to merge our organizations, and it has been excellent because now we have access to the YWCA Metropolitan Chicago and their incredible vast array of services. So the YWCA, they have the child care resource and referral. They have Head Start services. We have sexual violence services. We have our rape crisis hotline, counseling, economic empowerment, health and well-being, youth programming. I mean, community outreach. The list goes on and on. So that is absolutely the gift that we can bring to our families, because we can refer them on to our internal services, which are, as I mentioned, in depth.
That's awesome. Do you find that just in working with families as you do and you empower them with skills, do you find that when parents gain more confidence that they can make a difference, that it really does turn things around with the relationships within the family?
Absolutely. I mean, giving families small goals, some small resources that they can follow through on and we can support them absolutely builds in their confidence in leading their family. Like Dr. Robin was saying, we know parents are the biggest leaders of the family, obviously, and it's a huge leadership role. So when we can build the confidence of them as leadership within their family, it really can change the trajectory of their family, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So our programming is actually called Strong Families. So that is the name of the program. We went from the name Project Help, which it was a lovely, great name for 20 plus years, but it was felt very deficit oriented to me. People don't want to be perceived as needing help. And what we're really doing is building strong families. So our programming throughout the metropolitan Chicagoland at the Y is called Strong Families.
I like that.
I like that too.
Yeah, it really kind of represents. So the YWCA is a national organization, obviously strong in the Chicagoland area, but across the U.S., families can utilize the YWCA services, correct, Peggy?
That's absolutely correct.
And how do they connect and find out about that? Is it just simply Googling?
Correct. So obviously in our Chicagoland area, you can go to ywcachicago.org. And then there's also the YWCA USA that you can access information. But if you went to our site, ywcachicago.org, you could absolutely get connected that way as well. You can also reach out to me directly at peggy.mcguire@ywcachicago.org, or you can check out our Facebook page, which is Strong Families Suburban. So you can access information. I'm always here to help anybody, no matter where they live or what the situation is, because we all need each other.
Yeah. Well, we think the Y does such a great job of supporting families out there, and we really wanted to take a moment and highlight what they do. And as I said, it's not just in the Chicagoland area, it's across the U.S., and that's a great support, listeners. Highly impressed what they have to offer. So I really encourage families to reach out to them.
Yeah, it's an incredibly wide breadth of services. Like I mentioned, everything really from cradle to career is services that the YWCA provides.
Well, in addition for us talking about the Y, you have another topic that you want to talk about. And Jackie and I just love this topic of resilience. Can you tell us about the model a little bit and get us started?
Sure. So strangely, I went and saw this brilliant speaker, Kyra Kavanaugh. She's a CEO of an organization called 15B. She's an author, et cetera, in February, right before the pandemic hit. And she presented this model on resiliency. So timing was incredible for our team that does this work, as well as, parents and all of us that needed to really up our resiliency game during the pandemic. She talks about is 9 behaviors that we can do and check ourselves on to see how we're doing that lead to a resilient lifestyle. When we see our energy dipping into negative or low, or we're angry, or we're defiant, or we're feisty, and we all know our own energy. We all can feel when we're not on our game. You can look to these behaviors, these 9 behaviors, and see where you might be falling short, and take a breath and make sure that you are putting these into your life. And the 9 behaviors or activities that she talks about are sleep, set, which means, are you setting your day? Are you jumping out of bed, shot out of a cannon and running off, to take your kids? Or are you able to set the pace for your day, have a cup of coffee, read something, listen to something, set the course of your day that you're not just on fire? So are you sleeping? Are you setting? Are you making time to be still? Are you eating correctly? Are you nourishing yourself? Are you connecting with other people? Are you connecting with your partners and your family members? Are you moving? Are you getting around and exercising and getting those endorphins in? Are you being playful? Are you able to play with your friends? Are you able to call a girlfriend or a neighbor and just shoot the breeze? Are you unplugging? Sometimes that's the hardest thing for parents to help their kids do and to model that behavior. And are you reflecting? Are you thinking about how you're approaching your life? So it's really sleeping, setting, being still, eating, connecting, moving, playing, unplugging, and reflecting.
I want to interrupt you for a second, though, Peggy, because this is how my brain works. First, is there an anagram that can help me to remember these 9? Because I would be going, wait a minute, am I doing like?
Yes, they provided like a roadmap. It was called the Roadmap for Resilience, and it lists out these 9 behaviors. And like I mentioned, this came to me in February before the pandemic. So I ended up pasting these on my fridge for the 18 months that we're all living as social servants, really putting out fires by the minute for our community. And I had a CEO when I gave this presentation went, oh my God, do I have to do this every day? Do I have to? No. It's really just a roadmap. You can absolutely overlay these. I mean, if you want to connect, eat and play, did you go out to dinner with your friends, or did you, go for a walk with your neighbors and shoot the breeze? So you moved, you played, you connected. Did you take your phone off the hook and sit in the bath? That is, unplugging and reflecting. You definitely can overlay a lot of these behaviors. But for me, it's been really powerful to wrap these into goals with parents. That's part of our job, is we set goals with the parents we serve. And many times the parents, that's a foreign concept to them. They don't think about themselves like, what do you mean a goal for me? But you can set up small measurable goals, like Jackie was saying, when they access a resource or when they reach out and advocate for their family, that makes them more confident, right? So a goal might be, get 5 to 8 hours of sleep on average. You know what I mean? That is a goal that a parent could have. A goal could be, I'm going to get up 30 minutes before my kids get out of bed so that I set and I'm still and I unplug. So it helps us remind parents there are actual measurable behaviors that you can look to say, I'm doing this. I'm nailing it. I am being resilient. I am modeling this for my kids and my family. Because, so often parents think of themselves last until they bark at their kids, or they're yelling at their mom, or they're aggravated with their husband for something small. And then they're like, you know what? I know I'm off here. And it's a way to just look at that roadmap and say, well, sure. I'm being tortured on social media thinking everyone's got a perfect life and my life doesn't look like that. So maybe I just need to unplug for a minute. It just gives them some tools that are really valuable and back to basics.
And I like that, because I remember I had one client and loved to make lists, but it wasn't giving her that restorative factor that she was seeking. It was just her checking off her list. And she would say, I did yoga, I did mindfulness, I did my whatever. I got all that done. And she said, I still felt exhausted. And so what we talked about, one part of it wasn't about checking off the list. It was like being in the moment and doing those things, because that's much what you said of giving back to yourself. And I think in the parenting role, and we've all been there, you don't think about that often.
That's right. And I'm guilty of putting things on my list just so I can have the dopamine release of checking it off. You know what I mean? And so I'm super guilty of that. But I read something the other day by Brene Brown, and she was talking about when you're bored, that is when your brain actually has time to be creative. And we so often don't allow our children time to be bored, and we don't model boredom. We think it's a bad thing, but just doing nothing, allowing our brains to do nothing, it often leads to that creative, peaceful energy that can sometimes feel uncomfortable at first,
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love this too, Peggy, because I think so often, and we talk about this a lot, parents model for their children, right? And how they kind of approach some of these things. And so as parents are, utilizing this, they're really modeling how to be healthy for their children. And as we know, healthy families, healthy children, it's going to go back to how healthy the parents are. And the reality is life is difficult, right? And our children are going to struggle. And so as parents, we have to make sure, we're in the best place we can be, because we're going to have to do some really hard things. I look at this and I think about, it takes 2 weeks to build any kind of a routine. And so I know when I'm trying to build new things into my routine, I just have to be vigilant for about 2 weeks, even if it's one thing every day for 2 weeks. And then typically after 2 weeks, it's kind of goes into like automatic mode. But I love this list because it really does. And I think when we're stressed, even the first one, we talk a lot about sleep. I think when we're stressed, that can impact our sleep. And I think about the families I work in. And so often they say there's no time for us to focus focus on ourselves. There's no time for us to sleep and eat and move and exercise. It's really going to impact the children. And sometimes that creates stress at home. And so we're going to see behaviors as a symptom of a larger issue, meaning the stress. And rather than trying to fix the child, going back to building that healthy family model. And I love how you talk about these things.
Well, it's so true, because if we're not giving ourselves grace that we're not perfect or, hitting the mark every minute and of every day, we will not be able to do that for our kids, and they'll feel the pressure. And I know, Dr. Robin, you taught me a long time ago, like how the word anxiety is thrown around too often as a negative, and it's not. It is something we need, and it's something we need to learn how to manage and learn from it, see what it's teaching us. And that's something we try to put a mirror up to our families for and say, just because you're feeling a lot of pressure and anxiety doesn't mean you're doing a bad job. It just means, how are you managing these other maybe 9 behaviors in your life? You can blend in so that it's not as anxious for you. But just because you're feeling anxious doesn't mean you're not being a good parent, or just because your child is feeling anxious or stressed doesn't mean you're doing something wrong or they are. It means probably one of these 9 behaviors are off, and they need to be tended to.
Absolutely. And I think too, I'd like to even kind of touch on each of these 9 behaviors. And we talked a little bit about sleep, Peggy, but I think so often family members, their sleep is impacted, for many different reasons. Sometimes it's hormonal, sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's just poor sleep hygiene, sometimes it's tech. What are some ways, even, just when you look at sleep, what are some ways that you would encourage or help families with the first one, sleep?
It is so funny that you start with that, Jackie, because I literally am the poster child for the worst sleeper in the world. So I really work on it. So let's say with sleep, I feel like so often parents are so overly tasked that they don't sleep. Well, I'm folding the laundry. I'm, responding to this email. So they're overly tasked, or their mind's racing, which is where I fall. And so one of the things you can do is to just help people try to reflect a little bit and process things before they put their head on the pillow. That old adage, people who say, oh, I live without regret, no regrets. That is literally impossible. If you have no regrets, you're not reflecting. You're not learning or reflecting on your behaviors. It's not a way to go through life. So sometimes just creating that space in your day, for me, it would not be right before I go to bed, but maybe while you're driving, or maybe, when you're doing something that is mindless, like folding laundry, you can just reflect on things you're grateful for, things you'd like to get accomplished. And I think sometimes just settling your mind during the course of the day at some point, getting that set or still behavior incorporated in your day will help with sleep. And of course, sleep hygiene, right? Like, how are people putting themselves to bed? Are they creating a routine, a bedtime and for themselves, and all of those things that we do for our kids, but we often don't incorporate for ourselves.
Peggy, one tip that someone gave me, and it's hard to do sometimes, but it actually really works. They said, when you try to read like a book in a chair next to your bed, and when you're really tired, then, lay down. And if you get up in the middle of the night, get out of bed and sit in the chair and read again until you can fall asleep. And then as you do that, you'll have less and less periods of disruption in your sleep. And so often people just lay in bed, and they stare at the ceiling and they turn and they turn and they think. But when I got this recommendation, I tried it, and it actually really, really works, because it's taking you out of your head, one, focusing on reading, which makes you tired. You're in a chair. So it actually really works. You should try it.
Yeah. And, I found this app that actually can read you a story like you would read to your kids, like a 30-minute story while you listen to a pretty innocuous story to go to bed. So it's literally like the same kind of behaviors you put your child to bed in an ideal setting is what you would want to use for yourself. When your child cried in the middle of the night, like you just said, Jackie, often you'd pick them up, hold them, settle them, and then put them back down rather than have them lay there and scream for hours, right? There's a theory of thought on that, right? So it's kind of similar to how you approach you're putting your own baby to bed.
For me, it's interesting when you're talking about sleep hygiene. When I would shower in the morning and getting prepared, I was always so tired and sleepy in the shower. It was hard for me to wake up. And one day I suddenly hit me like, why am I taking a shower in the morning? This really relaxes me. It doesn't, energize me. And I switched it tonight, and it's made a huge difference. I always shower before I go to bed at night. For me, it helps me to fall asleep.
And I love that example, Dr. Robin, because it's reflective. You were conscious of, this might work for me at bedtime. So if you're just powering through your day and you're not putting any thought into that, right? You figured out
Right.
something that might help you. So it's really just that being a little bit aware of yourself, your energy, your moods, and seeing how you can make them work within your own life, right?
So the next is set.
Yeah, and that looks different for everybody. I mean, I am a meditator. I have to do that. It's part of my life, but it's not for everybody, and it can be intimidating. So really, it's just like set the day. Like, how do you start your day? Do you have that cup of coffee? Are you turning on some music? Do you like to listen to the news or something for 15, 20 minutes before you wake up your children? It's how are you setting the course of your day? That same kind of routine that will just set your intention for the day, right? That again, like your shower example, looks different for everybody. And there's no right or wrong. It's just making that cognitive effort that you're not going to just jump out of bed and race in your car and throw makeup on in the rearview mirror as you're hustling to work and getting your kids to school and all that stuff. Try to have some time to set the intention for your day, what you'd like to make it look like. And so at the end of your day, you can say, well, at least I did X. At least I did that. You know what I mean? That intention I set at the beginning of the day.
Dr. Aaron Weiner, we had him on a podcast, and he recently shared something which I thought was very interesting. It was on breath and breathing and the benefit of that. And in this research, it was a smaller sample size, it was like 108. But they did find that breath work and breathing was actually more beneficial. So I thought that was interesting to think about, because when someone says meditation is so hard, but just doing breath work can really be beneficial. I
don't know if this is the place to do this, but I was turned on because I agree with that full-heartedly, because meditation kind of spooked me. I can't calm my mind. But this one on-site timer it's a free app, and it has everything. You can literally do guided meditations, 2-minute meditations, walking meditations, affirmations. It's free. It's on your iPhone. You can put on sleep sounds. It has so much incredible information. It's called Insight Timer. It's a free app, but that's where I really got into it because it made it less intimidating. You check a button, how you're feeling today, and then it will like align a meditation or breath work or something like that for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you want to give it. It really gave me the ability to be able to work it in. And it's incredibly helpful to me. But you're right. Breath work, meditation, affirmations, any of those things that speak to you will be a great way to set for that day.
I like that. I think with set for me, and I know this is a little bit different. For me, I do better with routine. And we've had a lot of conversations this week with families too about kids kind of having a hard time getting back to school and adjusting. Part of the way I set up my day, typically my intention, I try to have that routine every day. I think sometimes some of these things are easier to incorporate.
Yeah.
You got it.
And so for me, a lot of times setting my day, some of it looks similar every day because I do have a lot of routine in terms of like when I exercise, when I eat and things like that. And I think we can go back to the basics. And I like how some of these, especially this set, really does go back to the basics. We don't have to do all these crazy things as parents. We can simplify our life and really just set some routine and follow these.
Yep, absolutely.
Love it.
I like the set. I'm excited to hear what you have for Still. I know you kind of touched on it briefly. How do you partner with families on that one?
I think that's a rough one for parents and for people in general right now, to remind them to be still. And again, like to talk about the 9 behaviors that can feel overwhelming, set and still can overlap, right? Are you taking the time to just not be racing and chasing? And it also can overlap with unplugging, right? So are you being still? Are you allowing your children to just be still? And maybe before dinner, you're just sitting there at the table quietly, or are you turning the TV off at times, or whatever it is? But we encourage parents to have some stillness built into their day. If it overlaps with setting, if it overlaps with eating, that's fine. But just to turn off the noise and allow our brains to have those creative juices flow, to be bored, for lack of a better word. Boredom is not a bad thing.
Okay, so I was thinking of it more in a linear, like I need to sleep, set, still, eat, connect. So you're talking about, Peggy, when you're overlapping, it could be the set, still, and unplug all at the same time. Okay.
Yep.
That makes,
Yep. And even as we move through the list, the next 3 are connect, move, and play. So you can overlap those as well, right? Are you going out with your friends once a month? Are you checking in with your siblings? or your neighbors or whoever that is. We all struggled with that during the pandemic. We lost connection, and this, social distancing, theory was difficult because we're social beings. So we need to be sure we're connecting and moving and being playful and in parts of our life, and that those three can overlap very easily, in my opinion. Like go for a walk with your partner or, something like that. So it's not linear at all. It absolutely can overlap, and you can feel good about it. Like, hey, I'm really taking care of myself. I went out, and I went to a concert with my girlfriend, or I went and we jammed and we danced and we were laughing our guts out and we heard some great music. And it all is part of staying resilient for your family, to incorporate joy and movement and laughter into your life.
And you know what I add a lot of times when I'm working with families is having them, there's a little self-talk in that of, I'm doing this because I deserve it. I do it because my family deserve it. I would be a better me if I do this. To acknowledge, because of that guilt of I can't take time, I shouldn't take time, all of that happens.
When I was doing direct service, I would always tell my parents, the best thing you can do for your families is to have them see happiness as adults. So they don't think growing up is this big, colossal task list and burden. It is a joyful experience. So, because they're watching you. I know one of the questions that you guys asked is like, what do I think successful parenting looks like? And that's such a huge question, because parenting is the ultimate guilt trip, right? We all feel guilty no matter what all the time about, oh, I should have done that. I didn't do this. And I think successful parenting is really just reminding yourself that of the little moments, right? Of those little moments where your child was kind, or they made a positive decision, or they came to you for some advice or some guidance or some wisdom, or they were super happy and laughing, because your kids are not an extension of you. They are a reflection of you and your family and the foundation you're building. So I think when you do show your kids that you can laugh about something silly, or you can laugh at yourself, and that adulthood isn't about perfection. It is about a journey of moments. I think it really sets them up for resiliency. It models it, and it shows them that it's not this big cross that when you're adult, all the fun goes out of life. You don't want your kids to grow up and be that way, correct? We want them to be the quote unquote happy person. Well, you got to model that. And the way you model that is by taking care of yourself.
Absolutely.
I like that. I want to go back and emphasize what you said. It's not an extension, but a reflection of you.
That's right. And it's hard for parents to step out of that lane. Like, well, my kid's an A student. Oh, my child's an engineer. Oh, you know what I mean? They're not an extension of you. They're their own souls, but certainly they are a reflection of what they're seeing and what they're accountable for within your family, and how they see adults and how the adults in their life are accountable.
Love it, love it, love it.
Absolutely. And I know these next two, I think we talk about a lot. I love just the nutrition aspect and eating. And I think you do a lot with families around that, with educating on nutrition and helping, even understand how our nutrition impacts how we feel and how we move and how we behave, right?
Correct. And the YWCA is phenomenal at providing not only meals during times of need, like over the pandemic, but really great information for childcare providers. They really get that is an important component of raising healthy children. We have programming dedicated to nutrition, tummy program, et cetera. So that's opened my eyes to resources we're able to provide for families, easy tips and tricks to do with your family to make sure you're nourishing them physically as well as all the other ways.
Absolutely. And I think we model, and, I've seen recently a lot of children struggling with body image and eating disorders. And as parents, we talk a lot about just even being mindful of kind of how we talk about food and our bodies. And for me, when I eat healthier, I feel better and I react differently. And so for me, it's been important just to be mindful of that. I mean, no one's perfect, right? We all kind of fall off, but just making sure I'm eating every couple hours, I'm drinking water, I'm taking care of myself. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of times parents are so focused on their children, they'll say, we don't have time for ourselves. Not only are we modeling as parents, whether it's eat or sleep or move, which we're going to talk about. One, we're modeling, but two, we're feeling better so we can respond differently.
Yeah. I had a mom tell me the other day, she's a friend of mine, she has 4 little boys, and she was having a frantic moment, and she said, the only time I can sit down and eat is when I'm driving. And I, like when I go through a drive-thru and I sit down, that's it. That's the only time. And I thought, okay, wait a minute, but it's true. It is very true.
So the move and play, we already talked about that with the connect. Unplugged and reflect.
Right. And I think that is also something that can overlay with set and still. And I don't know of a single parent that doesn't struggle with technology and their children. And I think if we're not modeling that behavior and consciously talking to your kids about it, like, gosh, I was looking at Instagram and that just made me feel this way, so I'm just not going to have it on Sunday afternoon, can be really important. I don't know if anybody out there has done that. I have done it where I've gone, I'm not going to pick up any social media or any respond to text messages for a weekend. I've like text my family or whatever. I'm out for the weekend. If there's an emergency, contact X. It is something. It really does calm your central nervous system. It really does. And I think, again, that is a modeling behavior that we can do for our children. It's a necessary evil that we are connected, and it's a beautiful thing. But if we're not unplugging from the news, from, the constant barrage of text messages that we get occasionally, it's going to pile up on you. And it's one of those sneaky ones, right? We don't recognize the effect it's having on us until we get that time to reflect and go, you know what? My life isn't that bad. It's going pretty good. This is going right. That's going right. It's not all the things that I'm seeing on the news or that I'm hearing or seeing on Reels and on all the apps that we're on.
To share this, I don't know if this happens to you guys. Jackie, I would imagine it would happen to you. But when I do that, do you find yourself picking other things up and then putting it down? I will find because I'll put my phone in my bedroom and then go throughout my day for a while, right, without it. But then I do notice myself, I guess it's that habit of having that phone with me or whatever, that I'll pick other things up and then I'll put it back down. And you can see that I'm searching for that need to have something with me because it's such a natural. Did I just tell on myself that no one else has?
No, this is totally normal.
I gotta say, Robin, that is actually one I do not have. But,
really? Because I thought if anybody would be you.
No, I don't know that carrying something for me is like soothing or helpful. I actually do notice, so when I don't have my phone or my computer, I feel more calm. And a lot of the children that I talk to say that too. They say they're actually, there's a lot of research that says we're more stressed when we're on social media, we're more stressed when we're on our phones. And in fact, and I referenced this in another episode, but a lot of middle schoolers, when I do talks, we talk about this and they say, everyone gets on us for being on technology, but we can't find a parent or a teacher that's not distracted with a phone or an email while we're talking to them. And kids in high numbers are saying, we need more attention, but there's always an interruption with a call or a text or something. And so when we look at connection, how technology can interrupt the connection. And many, as you said, Peggy, many families will say, I have a hard time setting boundaries with my children around being unplugged or around technology. And we want to empower parents to be able to learn to set those boundaries. So I love this unplug and reflect. And when there is that downtime with no interruptions, you really can have some time to reflect. And I often encourage parents when they're driving alone, not to, be talking on the phone, not to be playing music even at times, but just to allow sometimes just to sit and, just be.
That's right.
Well, I get there, Jackie. It does feel better. But at the beginning, I will find myself grabbing stuff. Because I guess I'm looking for stimulation. I do not, in the evenings, I make sure I'm not on my phone, my computer, any of that, because I will stay awake. So I'm pretty good with it there. But throughout the day, I think I'm looking for that stimulation. So I'm going to stop.
That's your dog.
Well, and I think too, and I know this isn't exactly kind of to your point, Robin, but I know sometimes then parents will say, okay, well then there's guilt when they do pick up the phone again and they see like 5 texts from their child from school. And we talk about, we don't need to answer every text. And sometimes whether it's a friend, in need, or it's a child who's at school or somebody, sometimes it's good for people to not be responded to right away, right?
And okay, remember that next time, Jackie, when I don't respond.
I blow her out.
I am the worst about that.
Keep her accountable.
But yeah, and so I think it's, I think this is a great list. And I love how, families no one's going to get this list perfect, but it is a guide as a parent when you're really struggling, reflecting on this list. And I think the only things I would add that I talk to parents a lot is just being mindful of, their drinking and or drug use, being mindful if they're on medications, are they taking them regularly and things like that, and going to their own therapy if they need to, if that's what is for them at that point. But this list can be helpful because when you go through, you can say, wow, these are a couple couple areas I'm really having a hard time with. Let me see if in the next 2 weeks, if I focus on one, if it makes a difference in how I feel, and also if it makes a difference in my relationship with my child or how I'm responding to my child. And most likely there will be, one of these that they can say, okay, that made a difference. And for parents, if one of these or, alcohol and substance abuse, or you feel like you're just not emotionally in a good place, I think seeking help, seeking support and kind of really having that time to work on yourself.
I agree. Yeah. It's concrete behaviors because I need that for my brain. When somebody says, well, be resilient, what does that mean? It's different for everybody. But, I got up today, I'm resilient. So, there's gradations, right? So I love that you can say, maybe if I just, connected with my therapist, or maybe if I just connected with the friend who I trust their opinion, maybe that will help me. And usually it does. And then you can feel some small sense of success because you've done one of these 9 behaviors. You've been able to manage it. And that's an accomplishment often. It makes parents feel that confidence you're talking about, Jackie, which is what we want to be the reflection to our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I love the overlay because that makes me feel like, okay, this is much easier than when I look at the 9. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got love it, love it. Well, I think it is time for us to start to wrap this up. So, Peggy, we have 3 questions and we ask every guest this. You can answer 1, 2, or 3. You can answer all of them, whatever you want. I think you've already answered one of them. The first one is tell us a funny story, a parenting story. This could be your own parenting story or something from your childhood. What TV, family, or movie would you want to be a part of and why? And the last one was, what does successful parenting mean to you? And I think you've answered that. So do you want to take a chance on either one of the other 2, or are you good? What do you think, Peggy?
Sure. I will. The parenting stories, we all have a million, right? My kids are 30 and 27, so I got endless. And then I've been teaching parenting for 30 plus years. But I was thinking about this morning, and I have the proverbial snowstorm, walking in a snowstorm story. So I am the youngest of 7 kids, an Irish Catholic family. I was talking to my husband this morning. I said, oh my God, how many stories do I have? And he said, oh my God, how about that snowstorm story? I'm like, okay, I'll do that one. But I was 5 and I was at public school kindergarten, and the other siblings went to Catholic school, and it was a massive snowstorm like we only get here in Chicago. And the public school was closed and the Catholic school was open. And so my siblings all got up and went to school, and I walked in the snowstorm to the public school. And I'm not kidding you, man. It was, 5 feet of snow, and I'm walking 10 blocks. Literally, I know we all have those stories, right? But I was standing out in front of the public school getting blown away, and nobody was there, and the buses weren't there, no cars. And a neighbor came out of her house and said, sweetheart, there's no school. Go home. I'm like, oh. So I cried all the way home. Everything was frozen. My boots, my cheeks, and tears. I walk in the door, and my grandparents are immigrants from Ireland, and they lived upstairs. And my grandma came down, and English was their second language. And talk about resilient being mirrored every second in my family. And it wasn't like, oh, sweetheart, collapse and do nothing. She brought me upstairs. She warmed me up, got me out of those wet clothes, made me a toast and real butter and a cup of tea. And by the end of the conversation, we were laughing about it and showing that resilience and humor and play. And, she let me watch Popeye, which is another cartoon of resilience. And I got the TV programming to myself as one of 7 kids. You never did that. So I got to sit, to be still and play and do all those wonderful things. And then took a nap, went to sleep, and rested my scared, weary, frozen self. And of course, as anyone who's from a big family, you just keep moving. And at dinner time, nobody even mentioned that happened until my grandma came down and was like, listen, all of you, like nobody paid attention to this little one and what was happening with her. So it allowed for some reflection at the table, continued humor, of course, because in an Irish family, you're either laughing your guts out or you're pissed. There's no emotions in between, and nothing's acknowledged in that regard. So it really kind of showed me in that moment when I was thinking about that story, it was a story of resiliency. All those things were interlaid in an experience that could have been devolved into supersonic anger towards my mom or my siblings. It could have devolved into like a whole situation with our family, but instead it just taught us, hey, we got to slow down and pay attention to each other and what's going on and look out for each other and let's reflect on what could have been better. And my grandmother didn't allow me to just devolve either. She she just said, warm up, eat something, and go watch Popeye, and you're going to be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just, you're going to calm your brain down, and we got you. Nothing's the end of the world here. You can recover from this incident at 5. But it was that tone in my family that I think I'm forever thankful for, because, you know, somebody else might hear that story and go, oh my God, that is so abusive. Yeah, it kind of is. But, you know, things happen in families and mistakes are made, and it's okay. But if you don't reflect that, how you can overcome those things, I think it really does set kids up to feel like they're not ever supposed to have difficulties. And that is absolutely the wrong message we want to send. So sorry, Mom, but she's in heaven. She's not listening to this necessarily right now. And there were other people in the house besides her that could have picked up the slack there.
I love it. Love it. Well, thank you, Peggy, so much for joining us. We love every time we're together.
It's always fun. Thank you for all that you do for all of us out here. It's such a calming, reassuring, knowledgeable presence that I think is so powerful that we all need. So thank you, guys.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Bye, Jackie.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe and like us to catch our next episode, where we will take you on a journey to find new ways of successful parenting.